to Beyond the Box. Inside, outside, upside, downside, beyond the box.
Break it down.
Our guests are insiders, now on the outside and the right side, dropping truth and nuclear intel bombs and breaking it down just for you. And now it's time to meet your hosts and co-hosts. Your hosts of Beyond the Box are Brenda Lankart and Suzanne Hott. Brenda Lankart is host of Beyond the Box and retired law enforcement. Joined by Suzanne Hott, host of Beyond the Box, Joel's Indoor Arena and Event Center, and White Horse Productions. They are joined by Tom Althouse, Brian Sang, and Penny L.A. Shepherd. Brian Sang, co-host Beyond the Box, is Full Disclosure Now Movement, fulldisclosuremovement.org. Tom Althouse, co-host Beyond the Box, is the real author of The Matrix, The Immortals, and The Matrix Redeemed. And Penny L.A. Shepherd, executive producer and co-host of David Zublick's Awake Nation, The Dark Outpost, Matrix Perspective, and Beyond the Box. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Break it down.
Inside, outside, upside, downside, beyond the box. Beyond the Box begins now.
Hello, everybody. Today is April 26, 2024. We are still in 2024. I keep hoping I'm going to wake up and it's going to be over, but it doesn't happen. So, where was that place that Jim said that he was, he graduated from?
Citadel, the Citadel.
That's right. So tonight we have Jim Scott with us, the guy for the FBI or JFK files, and he graduated from the
Citadel.
Wow, I've had a really rough week, you guys. If you even knew. So, and Susie is here with us. How's your day been today, Susie?
It was a busy day. You know, we got a couple dogs neutered, or well, fixed. I guess they're females, and messed with the horses. And now it's storming and raining out, and I think we have at least 7 good days of rain, supposedly, like we need any more. So I'm glad I have a kayak and a paddle so I can get out if it gets too bad.
I might need to get me one of those in my living room. So, all right.
Right.
Susan, will you please do us the honors, ma'am, and give us a safe place to be?
Okay. All right. So I just want to shout out to the Father and thank him for Jesus, and I want to thank Jesus for being who he is and speaking his truth, and that he would watch over us in the show and that guide us and lead us, and that we will move in the direction that we're supposed to move in Jesus' mighty name.
Amen. In Jesus' name. Yes. All right, everybody. We are going to go ahead and pull out our backstage people. I've got the co-hostess that does the mostest, Miss Penny L.A. Shepherd.
Hola, how are you doing? I'm just going to do a very brief intro before we bring in Brian Sang.
Okay.
And so let me just show this on the screen. So this is Jim Scott. He is a 1980 graduate of the Citadel. He's a USMC helicopter pilot for 12 years and a Virginia State Trooper for 8 years and a director of safety for a helicopter company. And he is an advocate, but a very good friend of James Falls, who James Falls wrote several books, I believe, along with his wife, Pamela Falls, regarding the assassination of JFK, in which he states, and I have a very short video which we'll be bringing in after Brian, that he fired the bullet that killed JFK from the grassy knoll.
Very good. All right. So let me go ahead. Let me find Brian. There he is. And we've got Brian.
Hello, ladies.
Hi,
Great
how
to
are
be
you?
here.
Good to
Good,
see you.
thank you.
You been okay?
Oh, I'm great. I'm great. Things for the conference are coming together. We're really filled up on all the presenters and people joining us now. It's the ticket sales are going and people are booking rooms. So book your
Awesome.
rooms and get your event passes now, people.
That's right. Wish I had the
Exciting.
money to book me a room anywhere but here. All right, Penny, did you want to go ahead and do that?
Let's bring in our guest, and then let him head off a little bit, and then he'll direct us, and we'll play that video of James. Good evening, Jim. How are you?
Jim.
I'm wonderful, thank you. Majestic,
And Majestic-y, as in Majestic 12E?
majestic even.
More majestic than them. More
As in
majestic than them.
Majestic 12?
They're the false majestic. No, right?
Yeah.
And how was your day?
Wonderful, actually.
Okay.
I worked today.
Yes,
I
we
work
all.
full
I think
time.
we all did. We all did a little bit of work today. We're all a little bit tired, but
I worked on my nerves today.
yeah. So did one of the dogs. The two dogs that got neutered were in here, just excessively whining, and so they kind of whined on my last nerve.
That's because they have to wear that cone thing on their head, and they're
take
like,
the tone
really?
of silence off of them.
Don't silence. They don't know what to do with it. You know, they can back up like a trash truck.
I think they made those things and they mocked Get Smart.
I think
The
so too.
tone of silence.
But at least they can't hurt themselves. Roger did come in and scoop up Jane, and Joel did take Lucy. So we're good for now, because if I start playing a video and one of the dogs, starts crying, we're up Schitt's Creek, but Susie's got a paddle.
You just turn it up.
I do
louder.
have a paddle and a kayak, yes.
Yes, that paddle was actually given to her by David Zublik, because she said she
Right.
didn't have a paddle. So then she opened the mailbox.
He
and
mailed
she
me
said,
a
"Look,
paddle.
I got a paddle." And right when she said, "I have no idea who sent this to me. I got this paddle from Amazon."
We
And I
didn't
was
know
like,
who it was.
"Really?"
I messaged Brian and sent him a picture.
I had to
I'm like,
use a
"Hey,
shovel to
did you
get
do
down the
this?"
creek. Okay,
Right.
so Dave felt sorry for me and ordered me a little plastic oar.
Now,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Jim here that since this is part 2, I understand, of the interviews. Where did you leave off from the last interview, if I may?
Well, we're actually going to do somewhat of a review because we have 2 hours here. So, Jim, with con permiso, I'm going to scroll through. I've got some videos that you sent me. So I have the one with Colonel Fletcher Prouty. I actually have 2. One was from YouTube. They had like slightly different beginnings. And then also I have the Smoking Gun Proof CIA Killed Kennedy with Dr. Jerome Corsi. These are very long, so you might have to direct me. I also have the Tipping Point Revolution Radio with Scott McKay and Robert Morningstar and yourself, Jim Scott. And I wanted to show a couple pictures that you sent. Can you tell us a little bit about these pictures? What is this first one?
Well, the first one was actually on my wedding anniversary. That's was in June of 2001, and George W. Bush was dedicating the D-Day Memorial in Bedford County, Virginia. That's me standing beside. I was on a special security detail with Secret Service, and that's George Bush's limo. And the other one, it's kind of skewed because it's crushed in, but I'm not quite that skinny. And the helicopter's longer than that, but it's that's me on the deck of a ship.
How's that?
There you go. And I was hot seating into that CH-46 helicopter, and actually that weapon I'm holding is an MP5 H&K Heckler & Koch MP5 with a suppressor, and it wasn't my weapon. We never were issued weapons like that. It belonged to the SEAL Team 8. A platoon of those guys were there cleaning their weapons on the deck, and I'm a weapons guy. Love that weapon, and I said, "Hey, can I get a picture of that?" And they said, "Yes, sir," and handed it to me. And I had one of my buddies take that picture really quick before I went out to the aircraft. But we were changing pilots, and it was my turn to fly. And
so you were flying that?
Yeah, I flew the CH-46 for about 10 years because I had schools and all that stuff. I was in about 12 years, and I did a ground tour as a tactical air control party commander and a
Wow.
air officer of a 1st Battalion, 8th Marines. They were the ones blown up in Lebanon, in Beirut. After they came back, I was one of the replacement air officers for 1-8. They were at Camp Geiger near the Marine Corps station at New River. But that's what I flew.
Didn't you
And
tell me
they've
that
been they've
didn't
been
you tell me
retired. They have
when you
fly
worked for
right now.
the Virginia State Troopers that they didn't even know you flew helicopters?
Yeah, it was funny. I was at the inauguration of the second governor's inauguration on a security detail, and the Wayne Huggins, the colonel that commanded the state police, met me in a like a lounge, and he goes, "Hey, how you doing today, trooper?" And "Great, Colonel. How you doing?" And he goes, "Tell me a little bit about yourself." And I go, "Well, I just graduated from the academy, a year or so ago, and I came from the Marine Corps. I was a helicopter pilot, and I had, put a bunch of paperwork into, and then found out that they wanted us to be troopers on the road for 3 years before we could fly the state police helicopter. They didn't bother telling me that before I got hired because I thought I was being hired as a pilot. And so he looked at me and he goes, "You're a helicopter pilot?" And I knew right then that, I'd worked for him for more than a year, and I had over 2,000 hours in the CH-46 helicopter, and they had no idea. I mean, he acted like he didn't even know who I was. I was thinking, well, there you go.
I gotta say,
great
Jim,
detectives.
I gotta ask Jim though. Instead of running you through 3 hours of street beat, you think that skilled, qualified, military grade helicopter pilots would be more in demand.
Right.
You would think, but you know what? I'll be honest with you. I did get to fly in the state police helicopter as a FLIR operator on many missions, and we rescued a few people, finding them with the FLIR, lost people at night and stuff like that. An old man, one night I found him and I put him on my shoulder, a big, heavy old black man, and carried him to the helicopter, but it really wasn't nearly as fun, and they didn't get paid hardly anything more than what the troopers got paid. So, I mean, it was way more fun to be a road trooper than it was to be a pilot, to fly with them. And they had other issues that they were flying single engine helicopters at night that weren't really rated to fly in at night. I mean, they were VFR only aircraft, and I just decided I didn't want to be part of the aviation unit, and I worked the road for.
So, Jim, for our audience out there, VFR means visual flight rating, and so you're a state trooper on their fleet flying helicopters that are rated for visual flight rating at night, which is
visual flight rules. Yeah,
rules. Okay, yeah. When it should be instrumental flight rules instead.
Well, we weren't in instrument conditions, and you could fly at night with, in VFR conditions. The law enforcement helicopters have an FAA exemption. They can go lower than other aircraft can go. They can break some of the rules, but you really, we flew into a snowstorm one night, and it was not good. I mean, and the pilot acted, he didn't have nearly the flight time I had. And I told him, I said, "Hey, we got to get out of it. We're flying in the snow. We don't have any de-icing equipment stuff. This helicopter is not meant to be flown in icing conditions." And he was like surprised. I was like, "Hey, you're going to kill us," But I didn't.
Wow.
I had other issues with with the JFK thing, and I was in a shooting in 2001, and not long after that, I got this kind of really a bogus complaint, and they made a really big deal out of it, and I ended up resigning. And it was the best thing I ever did because I got into corporate safety, was making like you know
Way more money.
had a 6-figure salary just in a short period of time after I left.
Right.
I did teach school for a year. I loved that. But anyway, let's get on with James Files and the JFK.
Okay,
People don't
so-
want to hear about me.
Yes,
Well,
they do.
well,
No, it's
and then-
interesting.
Well, quick question.
That's why
quick
you're
question.
here.
Was it the Texas State Troopers you were part of? What state troopers?
No.
What state?
Virginia.
Virginia. Okay.
Virginia.
Okay, and then
Yeah.
because you're alluding several times to certain issues you had with like the state troopers. Were you running into, I got to ask for our show where we are that kind of show, right? Were you running into corruption issues, or just like was it just the silly
look,
stuff?
every police department has corruption issues. Every organization on the planet has corruption issues. Some of the finest people I've ever met in my life were Virginia State Troopers. The one issue I had was I talked to supervision, and it really wasn't their fault. And I really believe, Penny, if you want to, I'll go into this story real quickly about how because this is how I initially got up with.
I mean, we're going to have you back a bunch of times, so we don't have to hang on one particular thing.
We'd like to hear a little bit about you.
Let's just talk about who Jim Scott is.
Yeah.
Okay, so in a nutshell, I was born in Florida. I moved to Virginia, went through public school system. I was in the National Honor Society, but I really wasn't the smartest, guy in the room. But I was the fastest, pretty much, and I was nationally ranked in the high hurdles. And I got a scholarship to the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina. Was at the Citadel for 4 years. Was the Southern Conference champion. I still hold the Virginia State AA record in the high hurdles. I ended up running a 13.994 at the Nike Nationals in Atlanta, Georgia. I was tall and skinny back then. I couldn't run over hurdle now. But anyway, my hurdling and track and field got me a scholarship.
It's okay. I'm a hurdle.
It got me to the Citadel, and I spent 4 years there. And I was a cadet captain my senior year. I was the honor graduate from Marine Corps officer candidate school. I won what was called the Commandant's Trophy, and I was the guy that got the wristwatch and all that baloney out from officer candidate school. And then I just, like every other Marine Corps lieutenant, when I graduated, I went to the basic school, and then I had an aviation quota, so I went to flight school in Pensacola, Florida. After a couple of years, they gave me a pair of those gold Naval Aviator wings that Tom Cruise likes to show off on his flight jacket that he didn't earn. But I was a pilot and flew CH-46 helicopters for about 10 years. I did a ground tour with 1st Battalion, 8th Marines. I went to 1-8. I was one tour after they got blown up in Beirut in 83. I went there in 85 and replaced the guys that were killed in Beirut. And I served as, they have a thing called a tactical air control party. And you have some communicators and some special equipment. Back then they had a thing called a RabFac beacon. You could set in codes in it, and the A6 jets and some of the other jets, like I think the FB-111, and they could home in on that beacon, and you could give them corrections from that beacon, and they would bomb those targets. So you were controlling the aerial attacks of jets to support the infantry unit you were with. And I love that. And I actually got to work with SEAL Team 2 on a special assignment. And I went out to Fallon Naval Air Station. Carrier Air Wing 3 was doing a pre-deployment at live fire exercise. And I had written a paper promoting that the SEALs needed to. SEALs have lots of skills, but at the time, one of the skills they did not have, and I think they have support teams now that do it, but is the ability to control close air support. And but I went out there and we took a team, not the entire team, but what do you call it? Let's see, a SEAL. I guess it would be wasn't a platoon, whatever they could call. I don't think they call them a squad, but there's a name in the SEALs. But they sent a team of SEALs out there, and we ran close air for Carrier Air Wing 3, and we taught those guys how to do that stuff. And showed it was kind of a proof of concept kind of thing. And then I think since then they assign what they call now. They have Air Force guys that are called JTACs, and the Marine Corps still has TACP, Tactical Air Control Party. But they're the guys that provide close air support and the bombing that comes around the infantry guys to keep them safe. And they have new homing beacons, lasers, that you can hold a laser up and designate a target, and like a JDAM 2,000-pound bomb, whatever you shine the laser at, the special laser, it'll come down and hit the end of the laser. But that's a simplified explanation. But
I have a stupid
anyway, I did that, and then
Jim,
what's that?
I have a stupid question. I'm really known for this. If you can
Go ahead.
fly a helicopter, can you fly a plane too?
Yeah, actually, we started out flying airplanes. We flew T-34s, did aerobatics and all that kind of stuff, and formation flying. And I really disliked flying aerobatics. I mean, to me, it was just really uncomfortable. And when it's even worse in a fighter jet where you're pulling, 6, 7 Gs and stuff like that. And I really wanted to be around the Marines. I wanted to be around the troops. And the way in the Marine Corps on the East Coast, where I was stationed, most of the jets, the attack jets, were at Cherry Point, and all the fighter jets were in Beaufort, South Carolina, nowhere near Camp Lejeune. That's where the Marines are, But the helicopter pilots, we worked, especially the transport helicopter pilots, we worked closely with the Marines and the infantry guys all the
Where
time.
do the
Went to
Marines
meetings.
train, Jim? Do they also train? I mean, because I lived in San Diego, and they train at Pendleton. Did you ever go there?
I did. Actually, I did several missions there. I worked when I was a reserve major. I did a amphibious landing. Was one of the operations guys, and set up a beach survey with SEAL Team 3. The odd numbered SEAL teams 1, 3, and 5, and I guess 7 now are on the West Coast, and the even numbered ones 2, 4. And then 6 is called Dev Group, and 8 are on the East Coast. But I worked with SEAL Team 3. That was a team that, I want to say, or maybe, yeah, it was SEAL Team 3. But SEAL Team 5, which some of those guys also participated, I want to say Chris Kyle was in SEAL Team 5. I can't remember.
Really?
But anyway, that was way before Chris Kyle. That was
Chet shot with Chris Kyle.
The what?
Chet shot with Chris Kyle. You're talking about the American Sniper?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, Chet, the man that was murdered on Susie's ranch, knew him because Chet was a career sniper as well. He shot with him at the place that he ended up getting murdered on his way.
Oh, yeah. That was a tragic, terrible thing. And, but anyway, so I did the ground tour, and then I went back to the squadron. But my deployments, my first deployment was down in Central America, down in Honduras near the border of Nicaragua. The Contras were operating down there at the time, Ollie North and all that stuff. And then I was in the Persian Gulf in 1987 with the task force that did Operation Earnest Will and Prime Chance. We were the group that captured the Iranian mine-laying ship in September of 1987. They were doing much like what they're doing now. It was kind of like a naval war and capturing. They were threatening to seize oil tankers and stuff. Exactly what's going on right now in both the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. But we took the fight to them a little bit and shot up some of their oil fields, blew up their oil rigs, sank some of their boats, Boghammer patrol boats, and all that kind of stuff. The spring after I left, they had Operation Praying Mantis, where they destroyed some of their oil rigs and sank a big Iranian destroyer. But anyway, so I was in the Persian Gulf in 87, came back, and I went to the amphibious warfare school in Quantico and graduated from there, came back to the fleet again, and I did a cruise and did the first war in Iraq. And I was in northern Iraq for Operation Provide Comfort, and there were some other things that we did up there earned 4 air medals for different operations in northern Iraq. And then I decided after Bill Clinton got elected, the Marine Corps was going in a direction that I really didn't want to be a part of. And I had always wanted to be a law enforcement officer and get into law enforcement. And so I joined the Virginia State Police and thought I would just fly their helicopters and do that kind of stuff. And that didn't work out really the way I wanted to, but it led, the funny thing, how God comes into your life and brings events and circumstances. So after I left there, I thought, because the retirement was the same, I would just teach school and coach track and football. And I got involved in that, but hated it because the kids weren't disciplined. They wouldn't do anything to discipline the kids. It was like they basically could do what they wanted to do. And you know, I guess this is the attitude of the millennials now, that there's like no, like you can't tell them what to do. They won't listen to anything. So anyway, I got recruited to go into corporate safety, and then I worked on the Keystone Pipeline from North Dakota down to Oklahoma.
Oh.
And I had, you know, my salary went from like, you know, basic trooper school teacher to more than what the colonel at the state police made. You know, so I mean, I was just dripping with money, and the only thing is, I, you know, was away from home, and I was I'd gotten divorced, so I was, you know, by myself anyway, so it didn't bother me too much. But I really enjoyed living in North Dakota and Nebraska and Oklahoma, and I worked a lot in Kansas and other states out there, places I'd never seen before, and had this 6-figure salary, and was just driving around by myself as the safety inspector on this big project, and really learned a lot. And you know, I could go off and talk about that for hours, about how important oil pipelines are to this country. And, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, what did Joe Biden do right the first day he got elected? He shut down the XL Bison pipeline and put 11,000 pipeliners out of work. Guys that were making between, probably a welder on those pipelines probably make $7,000 to $8,000 a week. And,
Wow.
You know what I mean? He put all those people out of work. And I mean, if I could be the president of this country for, 6 months, I could turn this thing around. Like, that's why Trump, it's not that hard. That's why Trump it prospers, because he's not part of the, you know, the deep state swamp.
Cabal.
He knows what to do. He's not part of the cabal. That's why they don't want to, they'll do anything. I'm afraid that if they can't be victorious in the courtroom, that they might kill him.
Yes.
It really worries me, because, you know, they killed John F. Kennedy. They ran Richard Nixon out of office, and then they ruined Trump's first term of office by all this Russia bullshit. And, you know, this country's going down the tubes. And I don't know what these people think that they're going to have. I think that they're being fooled greatly. They think that, you know, I mean, I know how some of this stuff happens. They'll go to them like, let's just say hypothetically, Alejandro Mayorkas. They pull him aside and they say, look, we're going to make you the head of Homeland Security or whatever it is. And we've got this account in the Swiss bank of, you know, $50 million. And we want you to do this, 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 and this. And we're going to let all these people in here and build up our labor workforce, you know, because people aren't having children and all this. And when you retire secretly, you're going to have this $50 million in the bank. Just do what we tell you. And he gets up there and, oh, yeah, the border's secure. All the while, waves of people are coming across the river, you know, and there are all these military-age Chinese guys and military terrorists from the Middle East have been identified across. Why would a terrorist who was involved in terrorism, we know is a terrorist from the Middle East, from, let's say, Al-Qaeda or Taliban or whatever, why would he travel by himself through Mexico into the United States? Like, for a better life, for a good job? That guy is a warrior. He's not coming here to cut grass and make more money than he made in Afghanistan.
Well, Jim, I want to speak to this. Have you ever heard? There's a name for this. There was a count. I don't know his full name, but it was like Orlova Caligari. and it's literally known as the Caligari Plan, which is to destabilize nations of their sovereignty by importing single military-aged, disenfranchised men to just come in and basically be the new age vandals and goths and Visigoths of today. And
No.
as for the Chinese, it seems to me that the CCP got taken over by the deep state as well over there, and then they thought they'd invade the U.S. with the UN and all this the jibbies and all that, as we well know. So just to say that there's, to let everyone out there know that there's definitely a name for it. It's not just happening randomly, not at all. It's all planned.
Yeah.
But they're
It's-
losing.
Well, the communist strategies of Mao and just the whole game plan to destabilize and split up populations and then to cause discourse. And if we were to just get so pissed off that we revolted and had a civil war and we started going after these people and taking things in our own hands, well, Biden would declare martial law and then have a crackdown on everybody, probably want to confiscate firearms and all that. But I'll tell you this, and I'm going to just throw
Put
some
everybody
numbers out
in
there.
camps. Yeah.
Yeah, who knows what the plan? Re-education things. There's 70 million. Oh no, let me back up. Anyway, it's in the millions, way up there. Like, and I don't have the accurate numbers, but I've heard this before. I went to a shooting school, and a guy threw this out there, and he basically said, we have 70 million armed patriotic Americans that have 1 billion rounds of ammunition, and on one side, and the other side is unarmed and doesn't know what bathroom to use. Who's going to win the fight?
Right.
You know what I mean? So if there is, the problem is if we had a civil war, I hope this country can get things straightened out without any kind of violence at all. I love the Marine Corps, but I hate war. I mean,
Me too.
it's ridiculous, and it's big business. Look at what happened. They killed Kennedy. One of the main reasons was because they wanted the Vietnam War, and Kennedy wasn't going to give it to him. And he backed out of, he told them from the beginning he wouldn't back the Bay of Pigs invasion, and it was meant to fail so that they could send in the Marines. The Marines were already on ships right there waiting to go in. It was a plan for it to fail, and then they were going to send in the Marines and take Cuba back. And Kennedy said, "No, we're not going to do that. I told you, if you can overthrow Cuba with Cuban dissidents and all that, but why is our diplomacy? Why are we doing that anyway? I mean, the whole Vietnam War got started on the USS Maddox incident. Well, it was a false flag. It never even happened. I mean, it was just, they just
Jim.
said, go ahead.
Have you seen the program or the movie Leave the World Behind that Obama made?
No, but I've heard about it.
Penny had told me to watch it, and it basically kind of alludes to they have certain people in the movie who actually find an underground facility where they could hide because they're looking across the lake and they seeing like cities being blown up and like civil war breaking out. And so a lot of people think that Obama, it was showing us what they see maybe in Project Looking Glass and things like that. What they see is coming down the road is that there's going to be civil unrest.
Well, there's going to be a tipping point. I mean, I went to a friend of mine's house 2 days ago to just drop off something at lunchtime, and I went by through Arby's to get lunch for both of us. And I got 2 combos, the large Arby's sandwich and fries, and a drink, and it was $27 for 2 people.
Wow.
Jeez.
Arby's. Yep.
That's
At
insane.
Arby's.
I don't want to lose your audience, but if you want to go ahead and get into the meat of this, I can. I don't feel totally comfortable talking about myself, but I mean, I served in the Marine Corps 12 years, and then I got with the state police, and was in a shooting in 2001, and then really got there's a lot. I thought about this later, but there was an incident with the state police, and I think I should cover that as a base thing here.
Yes.
So I had watched the Confession of an Assassin video that James Files did, where he basically describes in detail how he shot John F. Kennedy. Okay?
I have a 2-minute clip on that.
Okay. You want to play it now?
Sure.
Go ahead.
1 second.
So I rented the video, and to me, I thought he was telling the truth, and that's where it all started.
Okay, that's how it started.
So here's the
Changed your life.
here's the video. This is just a segment from it. It's 2 minutes and 39 seconds. So I'm going to read this. In 2003, 9 years after first coming forward, James Files, a former hitman for the Chicago Mafia and CIA agent, further confessed that he was the second assassin on the grassy knoll. He claimed to have fired the fatal shot at JFK. This is a portion of a 2.5-hour interview he did with researchers Jim Mars and Wim Dankbar.
So then what happened? The motorcade came?
I'm checking everything. I could most everybody, and just basically where a lot of different people are standing at. And I want to make sure that there's, like I say, I don't have any cops right next to me because, you know, if something happens and I have to shoot, you know, I don't want to have to shoot anybody else unless it becomes a necessity. So I'd walk away from the fence. I come back over, secured everything, got it ready. I could hear the rumble, the people murmuring. So, you know, the motorcade's approaching. So then I got ready, opened it up. I'm holding the Remington fireball down below the fence at this point. Motorcade come down, I believe that's Main Street there, come down on Houston, turn back around on the Elm there and come down that little side drive there. Oh, when it come down and made its first right, that's when I brought the weapon up. And then I'm over the fence, and as they come down, made the turn on down there, that's when I started focusing through the scope and following the car. As shots started ringing out, I started counting the shots, but I'm not counting like 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm counting them miss, 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 because I know we're going for the headshot. So I don't care how many rounds are being fired as long as we get a headshot. But I'm hearing the shots being fired, and I'm counting them as a miss, miss. And that's the only thing I'm concerned about. I've got this sign there for the Simmons Freeway that is fixing to come into my field of fire. As far as I can see at this point, President has not been hit in the head at this time. I've seen the body lurch. I know he's been hit. How serious, I don't know. But my last instructions was we're going for headshot. If you have to take a shot, take it, but don't fire unless it's a necessity, unless you really have to. He said, Jimmy, don't fire unless you have to. We want everything from the backside. I'm not asking why. Okay, whatever you say. At this point, as it starts to approach and come behind that freeway sign, and I've already been instructed not to hit anybody but Kennedy because they didn't want Jackie getting hurt or anybody else, I'm fixing to lose my field of fire. And at this point, either I shoot or I can put it in a suitcase and leave, one or the other. I took the shot. I fired one shot only.
And where were you aiming?
I was aiming for his right eye, which to me is the left side of his head looking head on. But for him, it would be his right eye. And when I pull the trigger, I'm right in on it. And it's almost like looking 6 feet away through the scope. As I squeezed, take off my round, his head moved forward. I missed, and I come right along the temple, just right behind the eye.
Okay, so Jim, you saw this interview. How did you find this interview and become interested in it? How did you find it?
Believe it or not, I was returning videos to Blockbuster Video, and I was working night shift, and I just was looking for something to do during the day. I think I ran a couple honeydew errands for my wife and went to the grocery store and stuff like that, went by Blockbuster, and I saw this video and I rented it. And after I watched it, I bought like 3 or 4 copies. I gave one copy to a really good friend of mine that built custom rifles at the time, Clay Spencer. Bench rest shooters know who he is. He lived up here in Scottsville, Virginia. And I said, this guy's telling the truth. Watch this video. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try. I'm going to see if I can do something to get in touch with this guy. Because I was a state trooper at the time. And, you know, you got, if you can, and I thought about it for about, you know, just not even for half a day. And I was sitting in my car late at night running radar out on the road. And, you know, when you're out there at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, your mind kind of wanders sometimes. And I'm thinking, how in the world could I, you know, actually bring this out. And I thought to myself, well, if you hear the whole 2.5-hour video, he explains that Johnny Roselli was the representative that spoke with the CIA and was, had meetings and stuff like that. So if they had meetings, which supposedly they did in Virginia, Roselli meeting with the agency in Virginia, then that was a conspiracy to kill the president, and that was a crime in Virginia. And that would give us probable cause to open the case.
Right.
So I just started kind of doing some quietly investigating from behind. I looked into his criminal history and all that, and I had a copy and said, he was who he said he was, but what kind of at first got me off track a little bit was that it said that he was in jail in Statesville prison for shooting a police officer.
Right.
And I thought to myself, well, maybe this guy is, because he didn't say, and the thing was, here's an interesting thing. He can talk about this. He did not sign an NDA with the CIA, even though that he was a CIA mercenary. That little red print that you read in the beginning said he's a CIA agent, I think. He was not a CIA agent. He was a CIA mercenary.
Right. There's a difference. And people don't understand that when you say, well, he worked for the CIA. They're like, well, did he get paid by the CIA? Well, he got paid as a contractor, but his name isn't going to be up on the wall anywhere. He was a merc.
Yeah, he was a mercenary. He worked for United Fruit Company under the pseudonym Colonel John Felter. And United Fruit today it's called Chiquita brand. It's a banana company.
Chiquita Banana?
Yep.
He was a Chiquita banana.
That's what I say to everybody when I say hello to the girls. I say, hello, Chiquita Bananas. How are you doing?
My favorite banana.
She does.
Got some today.
But joke as it may be, as many of you know in the audience, and I'm sure Jim knows, United Fruits, especially with the Bush family on their board, was not exactly probably the nicest. Any regime owned in their payroll is probably not the nicest to live under.
No, and actually the United Fruit Company at the time, if you see their symbol, it's a rifle. There's bananas and a rifle, and yeah, look it up. Go search Google Images for the original logo for United Fruit. But anyway.
Is that like United Fruit Cakes?
What's that?
She says.
I said, is that really United Fruit Cakes? Nuts.
Well, it's basically a banana importing, drug importing mercenary army. That was what United Fruit was.
Right. So
I found it. If you want to share my screen, Brenda.
Another business with a cover to launder dirty business. Yeah,
that's what it was. So and you had two mercenary armies.
There's a rifle. Yeah,
that's scary. Bananas and a rifle. What happened to Jim?
Right.
We lost Jim.
Where he go?
We lost Jim.
A pineapple and a rifle.
Bananas and a rifle. That's like
and a pineapple with a rifle.
Rifles.
Yeah. The early version had a
Dole
rifle.
banana? Is that Dole banana as well?
No, Dole. Well, Dole is.
There's a pineapple.
I don't know if they're connected now. I don't know if Dole bought Chiquita, but I thought Chiquita was called Chiquita brand now. But anyway, that's where the term banana wars comes from. Okay, and they overthrew countries.
Banana Republic.
Yeah, Banana Republic. There you go.
That's the name of Christy Tasker's news group.
So if you do. And they're the group that overthrew Chile. They actually hired 3,000 cutouts from Argentina that were Germans, and they were basically death squads. I mean, they weren't like special forces that went into a country and trained their native military to overthrow the country. These guys were death squads. They went in and basically, it's like they had the voting rolls, like if it'd be the Democrats versus the Republicans. They had the voting rolls of the Democrats, and they just drove around at night and went to their houses and picked up their entire families and killed everybody.
Was that the Pinochet regime?
Yeah, that's when Allende overthrew Pinochet, or Pinochet overthrew Allende. But it really wasn't that. It was the CIA overthrowing Allende and putting Pinochet in.
Right.
Jimmy told me that when they went to Allende's residence and they had a big firefight, and Allende fought. I mean, he was had a weapon and was fighting, and he was killed about 2/3 of the way up the steps from the first floor to the second floor. And he said all the mercs that went upstairs, almost everybody going up the steps put a bullet in him. And he was shot all to pieces by the time, the firefight was over. But they got everybody in the building, and then they just went around and they killed. He said they would kill sometimes over 300 people a night.
Damn.
And they overthrew the country by force. I mean, that's your CIA George Bush agency for you, Alan Dulles. That's what that's all about. But anyway, so. We went off on this tangent about United Fruit, but the CIA's got all kinds of proprietary companies. They've had everything: Southern Air Transport, Evergreen Aviation,
Evergreen, yeah,
Mountain. What was that thing called? Mountain Air Transport or something like that. But they've had all kinds of. And they still, I'm sure they still do.
Air America.
Oh yeah, Air America and Laos, and all that kind of stuff. When I was in the Marine Corps, every once in a while we'd have these big white C-130 show up, Southern Air Transport. And I don't want to talk about any of the ones that are today because, maybe I don't want to do anything to hurt their operations or anything like that. But we're talking about
it's like a lot of these companies have covers. They're covers for something else. So they're just
yeah. Oh, it could be something as simple as they just run drugs.
Yes.
I mean, Barry Seal flew loads of guns that came out of Nashville, Tennessee, that went to
Waco,
Nicaragua, and loads of guns. Loads of guns. Did I say Nashville? I meant to say Knoxville.
Right.
But anyway, the guns down there and drugs back, and actually. James flew on some of those flights, Jimmy Files, and they'd fly into Mena, Arkansas. And on more than one occasion, Hillary Clinton met their airplane there when they landed. And on one occasion, Bill Clinton gave David Allen Coe and Waylon Jennings showed up in a Lincoln Continental, and Barry Seal gave each one of them a kilo of cocaine. And,
right, because the music industry is intertwined exceedingly with the drugs. That I believe was a CIA proposition: sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yep.
Well, you got to have drug dealers,
There was an airport that they used a lot that was near Jupiter, Florida, and it's my understanding that
I live there.
One of them has. I don't know if I should say this or not, but there's a picture that exists of Jeb Bush helping them unload some cocaine from an airplane. And there's a lot of evidence out there that, and it's gotten people killed. Hillary.
There's money and drugs. There's drugs and oil. I mean, they want, if you want to become the richest person in the world, you dominate the things like the drug world, the oil world, and, right?
Yep. So
she's a Rockefeller too, isn't she? I mean, there are claims that it's Hillary Clinton Rockefeller.
I don't know about it. She actually grew up in Melrose Park or someplace close to Melrose Park. Jimmy knew her when she was in high school. They actually went out one time, and she grew up in Illinois, really close to him. He lived in Melrose Park. Yep. And he's a little older than her.
Oh my God!
I don't know how old she is now, but he's 82.
She was born in 47.
Yeah, so she'd be 77, and I don't know what month she was born, but that's close. But
she was born in
she
October.
admitted, yeah. But anyway, so where do you want to go from here?
I'm just going to take us down the trail. So now you find this video. You want to open the case. You get shut down. They're like, no, don't.
Yep, that's an interesting. let me tell that portion, just that one specific thing, because I really can't speak with authority knowing that all these details. All I know is what I was told. Okay. So I went to a first sergeant that I trusted, and I jumped my chain of command and went to him. He actually worked at one of our headquarters, and apparently he went to Richmond and talked to a lieutenant in Richmond who worked in the admin section. And unfortunately, I'm hearing that, that I was told that, hey, forget about it. It's a federal case. It's closed. Lee Harvey Oswald, 3 shots from behind, closed case. It's done. You got no jurisdiction. Can't open it. Forget about it. And if you don't,
that's how usually how
yeah,
they say it. Forget about it.
Yeah. Yeah, forget about it. So, but apparently it was like, hey, if you don't drop this, it's probably going to cost you your job. So I said, hey, I got ears to hear. So I'll, thanks a lot. And I stewed over that. It really bothered me. And it wasn't long after that, I heard this rumor. One of the guys that I worked with said, hey, did you hear about this lieutenant at headquarters? I said, no. And he said, apparently the FBI has been tracking him. They came into the, I guess, the state police headquarters, and I guess they would have gone to the colonel. I just have to speculate at this point. And they said, hey, we have evidence that this lieutenant is downloading kiddie porn to his state police computer, and we want to investigate him. And so supposedly that he was suspended. They sent him home. And the FBI opened this, investigation and I knew the guy, and I can tell you, he's the last guy in the world that would have downloaded kiddie porn on a state police computer in his office. I mean, that's just nuts. Who would do that?
Yeah.
But that's what they claimed, apparently. But the next morning or that evening sometime, apparently he ended up in the woods behind his house dead, and they said that he killed himself. So I don't know because my understanding is he's the lieutenant. He's the one that called the FBI and said, hey, we want to open the JFK case.
So they basically, they told you that you would lose your job, but did they allude that you too would lose your life?
No, nobody's ever threatened me like that. And if they did it in person, they probably wouldn't live long enough to go tell the other person.
But this individual did lose his life. Was that also a message to you?
But I don't think, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know enough details. I don't know for sure. It was hearsay to me that they just said, hey, did you hear about Lieutenant so-and-so? And I said, no. And they said, well, they found him in the woods behind his house. Apparently the FBI came down and accused him. They said that he was downloading kiddie porn on his computer. And then they found him in the woods behind his house dead. So I'm wondering if, I don't know, but, was he murdered by the government because they thought and the reason that they wanted to get his computer and claim, you can hack somebody's computer and download kiddie porn to it, and they go to it and say, see, he's got kiddie porn on his computer. Right. And then say, we're going to investigate him. And then all of a sudden, it would kind of look like, oh, they caught him, so he killed himself. You know what I mean? It almost, yeah.
To put this in context for everybody, because these days a lot of these files are being opened up after like so many years after the JFK assassination. But when you're doing this, and when this person was found, this other trooper was found dead in the woods behind his own house, what year was that? Because the closer you go back in time, like even in the 80s, and you're questioning this stuff, yeah, that could get you killed.
It was I'd have to think about that. It was in the late 90s. It was it was probably, I'm just trying to think when I got transferred from Northern Virginia down to the Lynchburg office. It was after that. Lynchburg, Virginia. Yeah. It would have been around 99, 2000, right in there. But I could find out what the date of death of that lieutenant was, and we could talk about it in a future show. But it was a tragic thing. And I personally, in my heart, I cannot believe that lieutenant would have downloaded kiddie porn on his state police computer. I don't believe it. I think somebody planted that on his computer, and I think it is possible. I don't know, but I think it's possible that somebody murdered him. But it was weird because it just happened, and they had a ceremony. Hey, we're sorry this happened, and maybe they didn't want to talk about it because they were like, hey, why did Lieutenant so and so kill himself? Oh, well, he got caught downloading kiddie porn on his computer. Well, for Christ's sake, anybody that knew the guy, I mean, I just couldn't. I just can't believe that he did that. I really can't. And in fact, I worked with some really super people at the Virginia State Police. I mean, some of the very best people I've ever known in my life were Virginia State troopers, and I just can't believe it. I don't believe it, and I don't believe he would have killed himself either. He had a beautiful wife, nice home, Harley Davidson, nice truck. Making a lot of money for a trooper anyway. Lieutenants get paid pretty.
Were there any other people that you work with that also suspected that this was not a suicide?
I actually. I don't know. I can't answer that question. And the thing was, as far as I know, I only talked to one person. You know what I mean? I did some of the guys in the office and said, hey, I saw this video. And the guy said, most of the guys were, that was 1963. Who cares?
Right.
And all that. And you guys ought to watch this video. It's pretty interesting. But I just only really went to one person. I did mention to my sergeant, one of my sergeants, that I had run this, I kind of semi-opened the case and had looked into the guy's criminal history. And when I went to training at the academy, what do they call that? It was called in-service training. And it was, you went every 2 years, and they would cover new stuff and get you up to date and stuff like that. And I went to in-service training, and I thought it was really weird that a state police captain came in the room, and he was only in there for about a minute or two. And he said, I just want to let this room know, if you've done any kind of, be careful that when you're running criminal histories and stuff like that, and, you remember the legal ramifications, you have to have probable cause and all that. And I thought killing the president of the United States was probable cause, you know what I mean? To at least look into a case. And I just think they just didn't want to open that can
case
of
that
worms.
everybody wanted to go away. Yeah.
And I think, but anyway, he said,
too many people involved that didn't want it to be talked about.
Yeah. And he said, basically, if you're going to do something like that, if you run into a case like that, just make sure you get it approved up the chain of command before you do it. Because, if you've done it, forget about it. You got away with it. I mean, and I didn't feel like I got away with anything. You know what I mean? I was just trying to, solve the biggest crime in history. I mean, can you imagine if they had let me go to Statesville and I'd interview James Files and it came back that, all he had to do was repeat the confession that you could buy at Blockbuster on a video.
Right.
We could open a case and go and start looking into this. Because this would have been public knowledge like 25 years ago if they'd have let me pursue this. So, I mean, literally, the JFK case could have been solved 25 years ago, and nobody wants to touch it.
Jim.
Yeah.
What I was thinking was that one of the things about Kennedy was he's a lot like Trump in a way. He's an independent thinker, thinks for himself. He can't be controlled. If he's not somebody that's going to conform to, the other people. He's going to make those decisions. And, that's also, I was thinking about Robert Kennedy, how he was assassinated when he was running for president, and the Kennedys had a history, their lineage goes back to Robert the Bruce, who was like the King of Scotland, who did the same thing. He was independent. He stood up against the evil people that were running the nation. So this is sort of a bloodline thing of the Kennedys, I think. one of the things I was doing last night was I looked on my ancestry, and I knew that Kennedy, I'm like 10th generation on my dad's mother's side are Kennedys, was a Margaret Kennedy. So I think that the Kennedy family has a history, they're from Scotland, of being independent thinkers and not being controlled. And that's why they don't like the Kennedys, because they can't control.
Yeah. Let me, I want to make some comments about some of the pictures that Penny was flipping through. But if there's any way possible, if you can bring up maybe if you go back to the one where it's the Ike Altgene's photo of the limo coming down the road, where you can see the broad picture in the building in the background. If I could make a comment or two on that, and then I need to take a quick break and go to the little troopers room. All right, that picture right there, if your audience can see that. If you, I don't know if you can zoom in at all, but
Jim,
yep.
How about we come back to this, because I need to do the 5-minute break thing. So
okay,
we can go ahead and do that. And when we come back, we'll do this. So we're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break, everybody. If you just hang in there until we get back. Maybe.
Everyone's dancing behind the scenes.
It was, I was trying, but my neck hurts so doggone bad. It's like, oh God, I just made it worse. Okay, Penny, do you want to go ahead and bring that up, and we will let Jim go to town?
Okay, so can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the presidential limo in the front. Kennedy has already been hit in the throat, and the limo behind him, the Cadillac, that is protected by Secret Service, stacked all the way around Lyndon Johnson, is, you can see it almost looks like it's being towed. It's so close. And I think the reason that they did that is because when Lyndon Johnson found out at the airport that John Kennedy wanted Governor Conley and Nellie, his wife, to ride with him and Jackie, he intended for the passenger to be with Kennedy to be Ralph Yarborough. And they were going to kill both of them. They were going to kill Kennedy and Ralph Yarborough. But Yarborough is back riding with Johnson. And that happened because Kennedy would not hear of anything but the elected governor, the senior guy, to be riding with him, with his wife, because Nellie would be really disappointed. They didn't really like, although Conley got along great with Johnson. They were pretty good friends, but they were going to kill both of them. They were going to kill Kennedy and Yarborough. And that's how Conley got hit. He was shot by Mac Wallace, who was up in the school book depository. And none of the shots that were fired from the school book depository were intended on hitting Kennedy. There you go. That's a good picture. If you look at that, you can see Conley has spun around about 90 degrees to the right. You can see the left side of his head. And you can see Kennedy has brought his hands up to his throat. And you can see the Cartier wristwatch that he wore that day is slightly exposed on his left wrist. Okay. Now, there was a book published called The Inheritance. And the book, I think, is written under the pseudonym Christopher and Michelle Fulton. But it's called The Inheritance, The Poison Fruit of the JFK Assassination. And that one piece of evidence, went after James Files was killed Kennedy, he went back to Chicago, and 4 days after the assassination, he was debriefed by his CIA controller, a man named David Atlee Phillips, who I believe at the time was the deputy director of the Central Hemisphere, which is basically Central America.
I'm going back to, I'm going to go back to the very first photo.
Okay, well, we're going to have to jump back in the story. This picture was taken in the Hotel La Luna in Mexico City in, I believe, January 22nd, 1963. And this is the only known photograph of the Operation 40 group. And George H.W. Bush was the commander, basically, of this unit at the time. George, the president of the United States, director of the CIA, ambassador to China, vice president of the United States, George H.W. Bush, that George H.W. Bush. He recruited James Files. On the left side of this picture, the first three people, the guy leaning over laughing with a cigarette in his right hand is Felix Rodriguez, the famous CIA officer. The second guy is the pilot Barry Seal. And the third guy is Porter Goss, who was the director of the CIA under George W. Bush. If you go to the right side, the first guy sitting at the table is Seymour Hersh. The second guy is James says that he thought it was in this picture was Frank Sturgis, but I believe that guy is trying to hide his face is the pilot Tosh Plomley, the CIA pilot. And the third guy holding a drink in his right hand, that's James Files. Okay, so he was with the Operation 40 group in Mexico City in 1963 as a CIA mercenary. He was a killer, an assassin for the CIA. They had regional response teams, they call RRTs, and they would get a phone call and literally have to leave their residence within 3 minutes and go on a mission. And he's explained several missions to me that he went into. You want to go to the next picture? This is a really famous picture. This guy on the left, which would be on their right, wearing a Bolivian police uniform. That guy is the CIA officer. That's Felix Rodriguez. Now, if you go online and just type in picture of Felix Rodriguez and Che Guevara, this picture will come up every time. And this is he was a career CIA officer. He was part of Operation 40. You saw the picture, the one that we just showed you first, where Felix is in Mexico City with him. Well, this is Felix. This picture was taken in 1967, October 9th, I believe. And this was the day that they captured and killed Che Guevara. He was the Cuban revolutionary that helped Castro overthrow Cuba. He's actually, I want to say he's like his mom was like, one was Brazilian and one was Bolivian or something like, or one of his parents was Brazilian, but he was from a mixed marriage. But he was I want to say his dad was a doctor. But anyway, that's Che Guevara, the revolutionary, pretty famous guy, right? And oh, by the way, behind Che Guevara, if you go back to that picture, that's James Files, the guy that shot Kennedy. This is in 1967. So 4 years after he shot Kennedy, he's in Bolivia capturing and killing Che Guevara. So if anybody doesn't believe who James Files says he is, a mercenary for the CIA for 28 years, this picture should prove it. I mean, if you don't believe the first picture of him with the Operation 40 group in 63 and this picture of him with Che Guevara and Felix in 67, then you just need to keep drinking whatever Kool-Aid you're drinking, because this is probably all the proof you need. Next picture is actually a firearm in my collection. When you go back to the screen, it's sitting here in front of me. That is a Remington XP100. It's chambered in .221 Fireball. It's like a really powerful little 22. It's a bolt-action center fire pistol. Here it is, right here. It's autographed by James Files, and it's dated 11/22/63. It has a Leopold 3-power scope on it, which this actual scope right here is a later model 3-power scope. The one James had on his XP100 was a M7 little straight scope 3-power, and it had these quick detachable. Leopold called them detacho mounts, and this one has a sturdy mount on it. But I have one it's almost exactly the kind James. The difference though is the stock on this gun is called, it's a brown plastic stock called Zytel. And this weapon was developed by a man named Wayne Leake at Remington Arms in Ilion, New York. And the first 500, I understand, the government got 1,000 of them. And I understand the CIA got 500 and the FBI got 500. That's the rumor. And where they went, God only knows. But the serial numbers for the first 1,000 would start at about, the first 13 were prototypes. They were made in 62. So starting at serial number 1014, because the first one was 1001. They started at 1,000. And up to 1013. Starting at 1014 up to about, 1504 or something like that, or 1514, something like that, would be the first 1,000 pistols. They're very, very hard. I hunt for them online for sale. One recently sold, or is for sale. I think it sold. It was the 28th one made. And but anyway, Jimmy's was a little different than that. And I don't want to tell you exactly what it was like, but the guy that was their armorer was a guy named George Calora. He's the guy that did the Mercury bullet. He hand loaded the bullets for him. But I don't know if these guns are very hard to take apart, and if you do it wrong, you can break this stock. And it's made out of plastic. It's actually not recommended that you disassemble it, because the trigger is displaced way forward of the action where it normally is on a Remington action. But Jimmy's pistol had a wooden stock with hand carved finger grips on the grip, and the pistol was marked in a very special way. If I ever could find the real one, I could show it to Jimmy, or actually I could look at it. I know how it's marked a special way. I'd know if it's the real one. But the real one was lost in a legal case. The real one was hidden at his uncle's house when he went to prison for the car theft ring. And the guy's son basically pawned it for drugs or something like that. He lost. He was shooting it in the neighborhood, and the police supposedly took it. And I mean, it's a long story.
Wait. So Jim, what you're saying is that basically one of the murder weapons of JFK ended up getting pawned off for drugs.
Yeah. Well, the rumor is that he lost it. He was shooting it in the neighborhood, and the cops took it. But we have the original paperwork, and they seized a box of bullets, but they didn't say on the paperwork that they seized the gun. And they think that maybe he, there's speculation that this kid was, involved in doing drugs or something. He may have pawned it. So, but the most accurate.
Are you sure
the most accurate story is that it was seized by the police, and the FBI actually has looked for it before. They sent a bunch of agents to the. It was confiscated, they believe, by the Round Lake Beach police in Illinois, and the FBI looked for it for a period of time, but nobody's ever come in. And we think, Jimmy and I have talked about this, that it maybe had been in evidence for a while, and the evidence guy, locker guy, usually after a case is closed and years later and stuff like that, this kind of stuff, they either sell it or give it to a gun shop, and trade it in for, police equipment they can use, new guns or whatever, or they destroy them. So that could have happened, but there was no record of it being, taken into custody and destroyed or anything like that. And Jimmy thinks that maybe one of the cops just took it and kept it. And then when the FBI came looking for it, maybe they just tossed it in a pond or buried it someplace and got rid of it. But all we know is that it has a wooden stock and a Leopold M7 scope, but that could have been changed after all these years. You know what I mean? If you can kind of try to resize this picture so it's not askew like it is. But this is Edward Lansdale. Yeah, they keep going that way. It looks better. Needs to be a little narrower. But Ed Lansdale was an Air Force Major General, and he's the guy that basically he was involved in CIA assassinations in several countries, and the Philippines, Vietnam. And this is the guy that is one of the top members of the Department of Defense that overthrew the United States government by killing John F. Kennedy. This is also the guy that gave Colonel Fletcher Prouty direct orders to go to the South Pole because they had to get rid of Fletcher Prouty during the assassination. Fletcher Prouty is the guy is played by Donald Sutherland in the movie JFK. It's Mr. X that explains that he was sent to the South Pole and actually the mission he was sent on was to observe the startup of a nuclear reactor that was going to power the special naval facility in the South Pole.
I do have a video that you sent. It's a kind of long. I have two of them. One didn't have the pictures that the other one had. One was 22 minutes and one is 17 minutes.
Why don't we do a show on Fletcher Prouty in the future and save those? Because if you don't listen to the whole video, but one thing I wanted to show you was 2 weeks ago, I went to lunch with Fletcher Prouty's daughter, Lauren, and she surprised me and gave me this little wooden penguin. And this little wooden penguin, I'm going to try to maneuver this in front of the camera so you can see it, but it says South Pole 18-19 November 1963. This little wooden penguin, it's got a string out of the bottom. When you pull the string,
I had one of those. My mom bought me one of those. My mom bought one of those little penguin things. Put on the light and pull the string. Yeah.
So this was a gift. It was a gift from Colonel Fletcher Prouty to his daughter Lauren, who's basically kind of one of my neighbors. She lives a few miles from me, and I met her for lunch not the last Saturday, but the one before. And she surprised me and gave me that little wooden penguin, and she said, "I think you should have this." But it's dated 18-19 November 1963. Yep.
Jim, I was just researching some stuff while you were talking, and my mom went to this little store and bought the little penguin, and we put it on our light in the closet, and you can just pull it and the legs, everything goes up, right? Well, that year that my mom bought that, she was married to a man named Robert Phillips. Now, I just looked up David Atlee Phillips, and he looks almost identical to my stepdad, Bob Phillips, which is a little freaky. So, I'm just saying, that was just a little weird for me.
Maybe they were brothers or something. I don't know. But
some relation or something.
But I've got pictures of that are actually within arm's reach almost. But Lauren gave me a stack of pictures of her dad and her mom. Her name was Elizabeth, and they called her Betty. And but after the JFK assassination, less than a year later, Fletcher Prouty decided to retire, and he almost certainly would have been a general officer. He was the liaison between the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the CIA. And Jimmy told me that he was a straight arrow, and he would never, ever would have agreed to this operation. And the plan to kill John F. Kennedy was called Operation Zipper. And in the year 2000, this book was published. It's called Regicide. A homicide is to kill a person. Regicide is to kill a king. And this book, they're really hard to find. A lot of times they're $75, $100 or something like that, but you can find them on eBay once in a while. Once in a while, you'll find one for $10. But one of the, I think it's like Appendix A to this book, is the Operation Zipper letter. And I sent that document, the first like 6 pages, to Penny. And it explains they had a kangaroo court, like a secret kangaroo court. And the people at the CIA and the Joint Chiefs of Staff and everything, and they all came to the conclusion that because the Kennedys, both of them, John and Robert, allowed the Russians to put atomic weapons in Cuba and threaten basically half the United States, that they were guilty of high treason, and it was justified to kill them. And that's what they used to justify the assassination of John F. Kennedy, Operation Zipper. And the actual document's about 28 pages long, except for the first, there's about 4 or 5 pages in the middle that have very revealing photographs of JFK with Marilyn Monroe and things like that. I don't have those photographs, but I have the rest of the document. And the last 23 or 24 pages that are in this book. I mean, this has been published in a book 24 years ago. There's a coded document, and I've got the copy of the zipper letter. There's initials that you can use to decode it, but there's notes from every meeting, and they started in like March of '63 at Langley. And it's the phone records and the meeting records of everything they did to plan the JFK assassination. It talks about what day they called Sam Giancana and talked about how much they were going to pay the mafia. They were talking about how they made liaison with, just everybody that was involved. Okay. And they're all coded by initials, like SG is Sam Giancana. JR is Johnny Roselli, that kind of stuff. And, there's references to the Joint Chiefs of Staff and all that stuff. I have that document, but anybody can get it if you buy this book. It's not like, I have some secret it's a formerly top secret document. And this book was published by a man named Gregory Douglas. And basically what happened is the man that was the deputy director of the CIA for clandestine operations at the time was Robert Trumbull Crowley. And he saved all this information to be released after his death. And I can't remember when Crowley died. I think he died in maybe as early as 93, but I can't remember. But the book, the information was released to Gregory Douglas, and then he wrote the book. Actually, and I had forgotten about this particular copy of it is autographed by James Files with his thumbprint in it. That's his sign. He puts his thumbprint whenever he autographs. I had him autograph a bunch of books in my library. This was published in 2000, This is a hardcover copy. What am I looking for here? But anyway, you can look up Robert Trumbull Crowley and his death. Now, if you can go back, Penny, to the photograph of the car, the Ike Allgene's, the big one, the wide view that shows the motorcycle policeman and all that kind of stuff. This is probably the most telling photograph other than Marianne Moorman's photograph. Okay, so look in the background, the building that has the white front and the pillars that are over top of the head of the Secret Service agents that are on the passenger side of what was that Cadillac that was called the Queen Mary. That's the entrance to the Texas School Book Depository, okay? But the building to the right is across Houston Street, and that with the one with the fire escape, that's not the School Book Depository, that's the Daltex building. And that building was owned by the Hunt brothers, the oil guys. There's a guy sitting on the fire escape between the second and the third floor, about halfway up. And if you can expand that picture right underneath that guy sitting on the fire escape, there's an open window, and you can see to the window to the right is open about 24 inches, and there's looks like 2 or 3 female secretaries sticking their head out of the window, okay, watching the president go by. But the window to the left, which is to their right, is only open about 12 inches, and there's nobody looking out the window. That's because that's where the shots came from. That's where Charles Nicoletti and Johnny Roselli were. They were on the second story of the Daltex building. Now, if you go to that building today, the fire escape has been removed from the building, and they've planted some big trees in front of those windows right there. So anybody that would go there today and look and kind of analyze the situation and go, well, where else could they shoot from? You would never dream that they could shoot out of that second story window because it's completely blocked by trees. But those trees weren't there. You could see clearly those trees were not there. So you had Charles Nicoletti in that office right there. That building belonged to the Hunt brothers, and there's a guy named Eugene Hale Brading, and he had the door locked. He was guarding the door on the outside with the door locked. Roselli and Nicoletti were in that room right there, and Nicoletti is the one that fired the headshot that hit Kennedy in the head nearly simultaneously when James's shot hit Kennedy just behind the right eye with the shot with the fireball. Nicoletti was shooting a bolt-action Mauser, and it was chambered in .30-06. Nobody in this assassination was shooting a 6.5 millimeter weapon. All that stuff about a 6.5 Carcano and the magic bullet, the 6.5 bullet they found on the gurney that recently Paul Landis claimed, he found it on the gurney, or he found it in the limo, and then he just threw it in his pocket and then just threw it out on a gurney in the hospital. Does that sound like something a professional Secret Service agent would do with a critical piece of evidence like that? I mean, it's ridiculous. Landis knew that they were going to kill Kennedy. The two guys sitting in the front seat of the limo, the guy driving it is a guy named William Greer. Believe it or not, William Greer was not a Secret Service agent. Think about that for a second. He was a chauffeur in the Secret Service uniform division. He was a guy that ran errands for like the kitchen at the White House. He once in a while did drive presidents in the Washington area. He drove both Eisenhower and Truman. He had been working with the Secret Service for a long time, and he hated Kennedy. Okay? The guy that was supposed to be driving that limo that day, his name was a Special Agent Shipman. When he got briefed that they were going to kill Kennedy, he wouldn't buy it. So they put him on a special assignment. You can look this up. Go on Wikipedia and look up U.S. Secrets, the death of U.S. Secret Service Special Agent Shipman. And he was killed at Camp David. It actually says that he had mysteriously had a heart attack on a couch in one of those cottages at Camp David. But they sent him up there. I think that they did the briefing up there. And when he said, there's no way I'm not going to be part of this, they just killed him. And then they said he had a heart attack on the couch, or in one of the beds or something. But this is one of the most important photographs. The other thing, too, if you go back to Kennedy and you can see through the windshield, And Penny, if you want to switch at this time to the close-up picture where you're looking through the windshield of the car, you can see if you'll put your little icon back on. I don't know if they can't see it, but if you look at the windshield and you look at the rear view mirror on the windshield, not the one on the driver's side, the one in the center of the windshield, right about there's a star in the windshield, like there you can see there's a reflection of light from the crack in the windshield. The first shot apparently hit the windshield and was deflected, and it damaged the windshield. That according to Robert Clayton Buick, and this is a long story, but he was in prison with Johnny Roselli for years, and he was also a CIS head. Is a bullfighter in Mexico. It's a long story. But he said that after hundreds of hours of conversation with Johnny Roselli, there was a front shot, and it was fired by Marshall Cafano. All right. Now, James Files disagrees with that. And I'm not calling Jimmy a liar because I love Jimmy. We've gotten to be good friends. And him telling his story is very important. Either that was compartmentalized and he didn't know, or when you go back to it, when he made his confession in the late 90s, Marshall Cafano was still alive, and he was the mafia guy that for a while when Roselli was in prison, I guess Marshall ran Hollywood for the mafia, and then also he controlled Las Vegas. But he lived up into the 2000s. I mean, I think he did. You can look him up, Marshall Cafano. He was a made man with the Chicago Mafia. Last name spelled Caifano, Cafano. And Marshall ran Las Vegas. Well, when Jimmy's in prison, and I hope he doesn't get mad at me if me saying this, because the reason I'm saying this is because this is what Robert Clayton Buick claims. And I believe both of them, but he didn't know who was alive or dead. And for James in 1996, 97 to rat out Marshall Cafano as being the shooter from the front, and also for saying that Major General Ed Lansdale was on the grassy knoll with him and was the grounds commander at the time. He never mentioned Lansdale's name because he didn't know who was alive or dead, and he wasn't going to. And they were both alive at the time, so he wasn't going to say what the deal was. So, as my understanding, this is from Robert Clayton Buick and talking. He claims hundreds of hours and years in prison with Johnny Roselli. What went down in Dealey Plaza was this. The limo made the turn from Houston to Elm Street. If Lee Harvey Oswald, if he had been a shooter and was up in the school book depository, the time to take the shot is when Kennedy was coming straight towards him and he was shooting straight down and Kennedy was coming straight toward him on Houston Street. Well, that didn't happen. The shots didn't happen until they got down to magically, imagine this, a guy with an open umbrella, There's a guy with the umbrella man right in front of the Stemmons Highway sign. All the shots basically were right between, in a little 50-yard section. And there were about 7 shots fired. According to Robert Clayton Buick, there were 2 shots from Marshall Cafano from the front. The first one hit the windshield. The second one went through Kennedy's throat, about right here. When Marshall fired that shot and hit Kennedy in the throat, Kennedy came up with his hands like this, which exposed his wristwatch, a Cartier wristwatch that was sold at auction a few years later. And actually it was inherited in the family. And then it came out and it was sold for big money. This book, The Inheritance, was written. It's called The Poison Fruit of the JFK Assassination. The poison fruit of the assassination was his wristwatch. Why was that? Because James Files claimed in the late 90s that he used a hand-loaded bullet by George Calora, the guy he was a former Marine. They called him Wolfman. And when Kennedy was hit in the head with the bullet, the mercury splattered and got on the wristwatch. Years later, they tested the face of that wristwatch, and guess what it had on it? Mercury. All right, now I'm going to make another claim, and this is according to James. He says that his CIA contacts told him that Kennedy was not buried in Arlington Cemetery. So you can dig up Kennedy's grave. His body's not there. John F. Kennedy was put in a white concrete box with holes in it about 3 inches in diameter so the critters could get in, the shrimp and crabs and stuff like that, and eat him. His body was cast into the Atlantic Ocean somewhere near Martha's Vineyard where his compound is. What's really odd is when JFK Jr. was killed in the airplane crash, they buried him at sea off a U.S. Navy ship in the same area. But if you to go to Dallas to this day, about a block from Dealey Plaza is a JFK memorial. And you can look it up right now on Wikipedia, images of the JFK Memorial in Dallas, Texas. It is a white concrete box with circular holes in it. Isn't that coinkydink? You know, what a coinkydink, right? So that picture right there, if you can again narrow it a little bit because it's skewed by it makes it blurry. That's the old new fence. After 63, the fence was replaced. Yeah, go ahead and make it narrower because that's even more than that. This is a recreation. This is actually James Files, the man that shot John F. Kennedy. This is a recreation after he got out of prison. He's holding in his hand a Remington XP 100 Zytel plastic stock, but it's the black version that was made later. And that's the stock only because he can't handle a weapon because he's a convicted felon. So it's just the stock of the pistol. It's a plastic stock. The briefcase on the ground behind him is a copy, the closest copy he could find to the one he actually used that day. The clothes he's wearing is completely different from what he's wearing, actually a MAGA Trump hat. He's a big Trump fan. And you can see that there's a couple slats missing in that fence. Just the other day, I was contacted by a guy from this story, and he said, guess what? He said, one of those slats missing from the fence I have in my garage. His dad took it when they were in Dallas on a trip there. But anyway,
Wow.
that's Jimmy reenacting the fence on the day of the assassination was on the other side of those small trees. It was on the outside toward the road. Years later, they put a new fence up behind the trees. And then since then, they put another new fence up. There's another brand new fence that's newer than this fence. And it's behind the trees also. When James took the shot, he was about 8 feet from the corner of the fence down near the sidewalk and the pergola. He was about 8 feet back from that, aiming over the fence, just like that, next to one of the trees. Apparently, General Lansdale was with him. Now, he couldn't say that originally when he did this confession in the late 90s. He couldn't say. But Lee Bauer saw two people there when the shot was fired. It was him and General Lansdale. And he had been on assassinations with Lansdale before. And when he killed Kennedy with that Remington XP 100, it was the third time he had killed somebody with that weapon in an assassination. But anyway, so when he fired the shot about 8 feet from the corner of the old fence to the X that's on the pavement where Kennedy was hit, it was about 88 feet. That's 29.3 yards. And with a 3-power scope, that's an easy shot. Any teenage kid could make the shot. Anybody with good eyesight and the car had come down almost to a stop right there. And the driver, William Greer, he knew that Kennedy was going to be shot near that umbrella. So that's why he slowed down there. And so anyway, Jimmy shot him in the head in the right temple, blew his head off. And about the same time that bullet hit, he was hit from behind by one of the Full Metal Jacket bullets out of the 30-06 fired by Charles Nicoletti. Now, there's a book that just came out. I don't have a copy of it yet. I ordered it. But it's a revisitation of the autopsy photographs of JFK's head. And the conclusion that they made was that there was one shot from a high-powered rifle from behind because of the type of damage that goes into technical forensics. And there was one shot from the front, from the right front, from the grassy knoll by a smaller caliber weapon, and that the bullet disintegrated on impact. The other bullet, the Full Metal Jacket type bullet, went right through. And that's why Kennedy, if you saw the Zapruder film, if you look at it in slow motion, Kennedy's head, it like opens up, it like flaps open. And that's what would have happened. But, you can shoot a lot of things with a full metal jacket bullet, and it'll go right through it. And it'll just be an entrance wound and an exit wound. It doesn't just blow it all to pieces like the mercury bullet. It doesn't expand like a mercury-filled bullet would. But today with the fence, I stepped it off personally the day before, or 2 days before, on November 20th of last year, 2023. And from the fence where Jimmy shot from, where the new fence is back to the X on the pavement is now not 88 feet, but it's about 100 feet. So it would be like 33 yards instead of 29 yards. And, Kennedy sped off to the hospital. This is a picture. I'm not sure exactly. I can ask Jimmy when this picture was made and tell you in the future. If you can narrow it where you can see James's name just a little bit, I think you can see it if you. This is a picture taken right around like he did just before the assassination. But that's what James looked like when he was 21. Now, he was 2 months in January. He went from November. 2 months later, he was 22 years old. And the guy that killed Officer J.D. Tippit, his name is Gary Marlowe. And it's a long story, but after this happened, he knew J.D. Tippit. They had worked together in Army intelligence on the Bay of Pigs operation, and they were both looking for Oswald. They were going to kill Oswald. And they bumped into each other, and Sam Giancana had given Gary Marlowe the hit to kill Oswald. And he told him, he said, now, nobody that knows you needs to know you're in, because we don't want any connections, anybody that survives, to know that we've been here in Dallas. So if you bump into any of these guys that are around here in Dallas, you got to take care of them because, Gary bumped into Officer J.D. Tippit, and Tippit didn't even draw his gun. He walked around and said, "Hey man, what are you doing here?" And Gary just pulled his gun and killed him. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest tragedies. But what this does, this part of the story exonerates Lee Harvey Oswald from both murders. You had multiple shooters shooting at Kennedy, namely Cafano, Nicoletti, and Files. And that's who killed Kennedy. And J.D. Tippit was killed by Gary Marlowe, this man right here. And I've got other pictures of Gary. But Gary backed out of the program at one point. He said, I'm not doing this anymore. And after he'd killed his friend, and they helped him get through college. He got a degree in some kind of HVAC, like technical training, and he opened a HVAC company and ran that until he died. And nobody knew who he was until his sister ratted him out for a $10,000 reward, which she only got $5,000 of the money. But or his sister-in-law, I guess, was the one that said, that picture was out there, a reward, $10,000. Who is this man? All right, this picture right here, this is important. And this goes back to one of the reasons why a lot of this happened. You can narrow this picture just a little bit too, but there's, I think everybody that can see this picture, the second man sitting next to the Navy Admiral, kind of in the middle on the front row, is Winston Churchill, the bald man. All right. The guy sitting beside him in the brown Army uniform is a British general named Alan Brooke. When Alan Brooke was in his late 70s, he was going to publish his memoirs. And in those memoirs, he was going to release a bunch of classified information, one of which was the British had broken the German Enigma code during the war, and they were reading the Germans' mail. And that had not been released. And this was like in 1960 or something like that. You can look this up on Wikipedia. And the only thing on Wikipedia that's wrong is it says he died in bed with his wife, and that's possible. But what happened is the British intelligence contacted Alan Dulles and said, we want to kill Alan Brooke, and this is why. He's going to publish his memoirs and release all this classified information. And then also what he's going to do is he's going to disparage Eisenhower, Omar Bradley. He's going to released the secret that the OSS killed General George Patton. An OSS officer named Douglas Bazada was paid $10,000 to kill George Patton. And they tried to do it in a car accident, and it didn't work out, and they ended up killing him in his hospital room before he was transported to Germany. But Alan Brooke was the British MI6 said they called the CIA and said, "Hey, can you kill this guy because he's gonna embarrass a lot of people and release a bunch of secrets." And so Alan Dulles went to Kennedy and said, "What do you think about this? They want us to kill this British general." And Kennedy looked at Alan Dulles and went like, "Are you out of your damn mind? Like, no, we're not going to kill a general officer from one of our allies just because they're having a dispute with him." Can you imagine if that got out in the public? He said, not only do you not do it, but don't help them in any way. Don't loan them any secret guns. Don't shoot at them. Don't whatever. Don't harm this man. Don't loan him poison, whatever. But anyway, Alan Dulles went ahead and they did it anyway, and they killed Alan Brooke. If you look up in Wikipedia, it says he died in bed with his wife. So I don't know if they poisoned him. I don't know how they killed him, but they killed him. Well, Kennedy found out about it. And that's when he came unglued and he made the public announcement. And he said that he was going to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and cast it into the wind because they were just a completely rogue organization doing things that they thought was right, but they wouldn't even listen to the president of the United States. Now, at the same time, you got to remember that Kennedy was read into the Majestic 12 program, which was the situation involving our relationship with extraterrestrials. And if you want to, at this point, I emailed Penny and Susie and Brenda the copy of the trademark speech. Would one of y'all like to read that now, or what? This was the speech that Kennedy was going to make 30 minutes after he got assassinated.
Are we allowed to put that out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did you get it, Brenda? Because I didn't see that.
It was in your email. I sent it to you and Susie. I can pull it up and
I
I
had
can read
about
it
6 emails, so the last one I got were the photos.
Okay.
Trademark that you sent at 8:38. Okay, 1 second. The JFK assassination speech. One of the primary reasons. One of the primary reasons for the public assassination of President John F. Kennedy by the CIA in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963, was to stop him from delivering a speech that was planned at the Dallas Trademark for 1 p.m. This is the speech that President Kennedy would have given at the Trademark in Dallas if he had not been assassinated in Dealey Plaza. What follows is a transcript of what would have likely been President Kennedy's most historic speech. My fellow Americans, people of the world, today we set forth on a journey into a new era. One age, the childhood of mankind, is ending and another age is about to begin. The journey of which I speak is full of unknowable challenges, but I believe that all of our yesterdays, all of the struggles of the past, have uniquely prepared our generation to prevail. Citizens of this earth, we are not alone. God, in his infinite wisdom, has seen fit to populate his universe with other beings, intelligent creatures such as ourselves. How can I state this with such authority? In the year 1947, our military forces recovered from the drying New Mexico desert the remains of an aircraft of unknown origin. Science soon determined that this vehicle came from the far reaches of space. Since that time, our government has made contact with the creators of this spacecraft. Although this news may sound fantastic and indeed terrifying, I ask you not to greet it with undue fear or pessimism. I assure you, as your president, that these beings mean us no harm. Rather, they promise to help our nation overcome the common enemies of all mankind: tyranny, poverty, disease, and war. We have determined that they are not foes but friends. Together with them, we can create a better world. I cannot tell you that there will not be any stumbling or missteps along the road ahead, but I believe that we have found the true destiny of the people of this great land to lead the world into a glorious future. In the coming days, weeks, and months, you will learn more about these visitors, why they are here, and why our leaders have kept their presence a secret from you for so long. I ask you to look for the future, not with timidity, but with courage, because we can achieve in our time the ancient vision of peace on earth and prosperity for all humankind. God bless you, President John F. Kennedy, United States of America, November 22nd, 1963. President John F. Kennedy was going to reveal the secrets involving the Roswell crash of extraterrestrial spacecraft, the beings that were in them, and the relationship of the U.S. government with the extraterrestrials. One key reason the CIA killed JFK was to keep this revelation about extraterrestrial life and the Majestic 12 Committee a top secret.
Okay, so if you would go to the picture that's labeled the Byrne memo. So basically, way before, it wasn't just they found out it that morning or something. They'd been, planning to kill Kennedy for over a year, really. And, the initial plan was to kill him in Chicago, and then they thought about New Orleans and then Miami. And it ended up being, after he fired, and let me back up just a little bit. The CIA killed Alan Brooke, the one thing, if you can narrow that a little bit, people might be actually to read it, where you can see the print well. But I'm not going to read the pages, but that's the first page of the zipper document. And I think you've got just about 5 or 6 of the pages, but it explains why they wanted to. It was a death sentence to JFK, and they said that it was for high treason for the atomic weapons in Cuba. But one of the things that they didn't want to talk about and they didn't want to put in print was, if that's not the go to the Byrne memo. That's the zipper document.
I'm not sure which one that is. Give me a moment.
No, it's okay. It's all right. It looks like a piece of paper that's been burned in a fireplace. Just keep going down a little further.
I don't have any such document.
Okay, that's fine. It must not have downloaded. But anyway, there's a document called, you can look it up online. It's called the Byrne memo. And it was a memo. It was marked top secret MJ-12. It was from the Majestic 12 Committee. And it was actually written by Alan Dulles. And it basically, makes reference to Kennedy. His Secret Service call sign was Lancer. And it basically said that Lancer is pushing for information to be released because he was read into the Majestic 12 program and the extraterrestrial stuff. And he wanted to release it to the public. He said, hey, you can't keep this from the people of the world. They need to know that they're aliens and that we've got their craft and, all this kind of stuff. He wanted to make a disclosure. Well, there was this letter. It's about 7 pages long, and it was meant to be burned in a fire, and it actually was thrown into a fire and started to burn. And whoever had the opportunity, they grabbed it and got it out of the fire. And the government, I don't even know if they made a comment about it, but their first thing, remember, the motto of the CIA is deny everything, admit nothing, make counter accusations. And that's what they teach you, when you get in a bind and people are accusing you of doing something, deny everything, admit nothing, make counter accusations. That's the deal. Well, the Byrne memo's got this reference in there from Alan Dulles, and it basically says, if Lancer continues Kennedy to push to release this information, that we can't let him do that. And the solution must be wet, which means they're going to kill him. And there were a lot of reasons and a lot of people wanted him dead. Like, look at Johnson. If Kennedy was dead, first off, he's going to become the president of the United States. The week before Kennedy was assassinated, the cover of Life magazine was a big article called the Bobby Baker, Billy Estes affair, or whatever it is. And it was, Johnson was fixing to be indicted for a couple things. One was 9 murders that Mac Wallace was involved in, that kind of stuff. But also they had been stealing money from an agricultural grant program to the tune in the millions. Johnson was stealing money from the U.S. government, from the Treasury. And they were like turning in fake claims or something like that for their farms and all that, and getting big money. The Byrne memo basically was a note that said, if he continues to press on the issue of the alien stuff, we're going to kill him. And it was shortly after that, that the assassination occurred. And this speech, if you look up the JFK trademark speech, there is one online that they claim was the original one that he was going to give. But anybody that knows anything about John F. Kennedy would know that that speech is bullshit. And what the reason I say that is basically the speech, and it's a really long speech. It's not a short, brief thing like you just read that would be given at a luncheon. It was like a lecture on how communism was going to spread through Southeast Asia. We needed to go to war in Vietnam and all that stuff. Kennedy would have never said any of that. Okay. And also it's basically part of the cover up. It's just like the Warren Commission. You know, they manipulated all the evidence, and, you know, it was just a way to cover the crime.
Jim, can I ask you a question, Jim? Because I know we're to the end of our time here with you, and know, at least until we have you on again.
Wow, I can't believe the 2 hours.
Exactly, because I mean, you've been a wealth of information, and I've always been a kind of conspiracy theorist fan, if you will. And then with the JFK, I learned a lot more new information tonight and a lot of detail. I was going to ask you, you mentioned the one colonel who was sent to Siberia or whatever. To
South Pole. That's Fletcher Prouty.
Fletcher Prouty. And then he's
the one that wrote the book JFK, the movie was made out of.
Right.
Fletcher Prouty.
And then so, in the way he's depicted by Donald Sutherland, and I just want to ask, some people say that the so-called white hat movement kind of was born with the assassination of Kennedy, just like how there were the people in the deep state cabal side who were in on it, the Dulles and Bush types. There would have been the Prouties, if you will, who did not like that and wanted to do everything to stop that. Would you agree with that, or would you say that's wishful thinking? Oh,
I don't know if are you talking about like the white hat movement started with Kennedy?
Yeah, with people saying who are part of that administration, whether in the military or whatever part of that government apparatus, who would have been opposed to the assassination of Kennedy and would have vowed, okay, hey, we're going to, get justice and get these bastards, whoever did this.
Well, if it didn't, it should have, because that's the day that, people talk about, the Biden is jumping up and down about, oh, Trump's going to end democracy. It's really the other way around.
Right.
Biden is going to end democracy if they let him go. But I don't know if it started then, but it should have if it didn't, because that's the day America died.
Right. All right, Jim, you are going to be coming back, definitely, because we have a lot to cover, and it is time. We are out of time. So real quick, I'm going to run through everybody. Penny, where can everybody find you?
Yes, you can find me on Awake Nation. That's Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern. We also are on Dark Outpost at darkoutpost.tv, and also on Beyond the Box, which is on Friday and Saturday from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Central, and that's 10 to 12 midnight Eastern.
And Brian, real quick, where can everybody find you?
Yeah, the main place is online at fulldisclosuremovement.org because of our upcoming conference with like 35 world-class whistleblowers and testifiers in July in Florida at the Serrata Beach Resort. So please find me online there. I'm also on a number of shows with Penny, like Awake Nation, as well as Beyond the Box here with you all. And
Dark Outpost.
And Dark Outpost recently. That was great. And then also with Arkeem Ra on Disclosure Now podcast.
And Jim?
Well, I don't have any kind of website. I'll just make a pitch. James Files Bush book is Primary Target JFK, How the CIA Used the Chicago Mob to Kill the President. This book is available. It's all the details about the JFK assassination as far as James Files goes, and it's available at jfkmurder.weebly.com. And Pam wrote the book, and she wrote an interview with history. Also, there's a book called To Kill a Country. If you can find a copy, it would only be on eBay or something like that. That's a great book about the JFK assassination and the overthrow of Chile.
Okay, and Susie?
You can find me here Friday and Saturday nights, and also the Awake Nation every other Friday, and went on the Dark Outpost today, actually, and on Facebook under Suzanne Hott.
All right. And everybody, we are out of time. We will be here tomorrow night with Tommy Edwards. So please join us tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Central Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And like always, please be kind to one another and have a good night.
God bless.
Goodbye for now from Beyond the Box. Inside, outside, upside, downside, Beyond the Box. Please join us again for Beyond the Box Friday and Saturday evenings from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Central, 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern. Join us for more intel bombs with our extraordinary guests.
Break it down.
Inside, outside, upside, down.